all connections are made. We're live. Welcome to SteepleLess Church. We are glad that you are with us. If you've never seen one of our videos and like, what is he talking about? That's a weird way to start. We have different platforms and they all kick off at slightly different times. And so they give me the thumbs up when we're completely ready to go. So good morning. We're glad that you're here. And I wonder where you are, because I know the people in the room. I know some of you around the country, but we can tell how many people watched it. Most of you, I don't know, or I don't know who, I may know you, but I don't know that you're watching. We would love to know who you are, where you're from. Please chat on whatever platform you're on. Even go to the website. If you want to be completely anonymous, just send us a message saying, hey, you know what? I'm in North Carolina and I'm watching the service. We'd love to know where you are. Today, we're going to be looking at Matthew 10, verses 5 through 15. I'm washing my hands of that deal is the name of today's message. And I think in just a little bit, you'll understand why. Every morning on Sunday, before we get into the actual message, we tell a fish tale. And this is a story about something that's happened to somebody at SteepleLess Church, usually the week before, in other words, in the last week, sometimes not, but that is the case today. This is something that actually happened 2 weeks ago, but we had that other story that came up, so I switched them. So we're going to tell a fish tale in a second. I do want to tease you a little bit, though. I have something that happened in the last couple days that was really, really cool. Not just one God moment, but multiple God moments that wove a tapestry that there's no way on earth a human being could have ever figured out the way God does. It probably will be next week's fish tale, but we'll see. So that's a tease, hoping you'll come back and check it out, because it's a really cool story. And it's actually me. Shocking, happened at an airport, I know, but just a little tease. I'm hoping you'll come back and check that out. It's worth the listen. Today, though, I want to talk about something that happened a couple weeks ago. Went to a convention. One of my clients, I was there at their office that week, and there was a convention. It was very, very local to them. It was literally like half hour from the office. So we decided, even though there was a lot going on, that we would go ahead and go there. And one of the vendors there is someone who's been courting me and my client to buy something. And we haven't decided yet. And so that person reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to go to lunch? First it was, are you going to this convention? I said, yes. Then can I take you to lunch? And sure, I can do that. And I've had multiple conversations with this young lady, very nice. Again, I'm just going to call her Betty. That's her new name. So I've met Betty lots of times. I know her boss really well, but I've never really had personal, private conversations. It always was in the context of there are other people around and it's all business, which is pretty normal, right? If you own a business or work for someplace, it's very common that you don't have personal conversations with vendors, and that was the case with her. So long story short, we go to lunch, and it wasn't just me. She had invited a couple of other folks who were potential clients, and we're sitting at, it was actually absolutely beautiful, because unlike Dallas, you could sit outside at a table and not melt. And there was a nice little breeze, and this was in northern Michigan, right on Lake Michigan. I'm sorry, not on Lake Michigan, on a lake next to Lake Michigan, a really gorgeous view. But literally, you're looking out at the water, really nice. Definitely one of those places, like if we spend an extra few minutes here, that's okay. I don't mind today. It's so beautiful. Well, there was another couple, husband and wife, and I'd never met them before. I had heard of them, uh, and I actually knew a surprisingly large amount of information about them because they had recently sold one of their companies, and I was actually involved in somebody who tried to buy it. So I knew a lot about them, but I never met them. And what I really didn't know is that they were believers. I had no idea that they were Christians. And so we have this nice lunch, and there's half a dozen of us at this table. And the man starts telling a story. And as he starts progressing through the story, I'm like, this is starting to sound like a God story. And it was. And it wasn't just a God story, it was a God did a miracle story. And so I'm like, well, that's really cool, especially because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, usually it's me having to lead that conversation, right? It's not somebody else, especially in a group that small, and especially in this setting. So then everybody's like, wow, that's kind of amazing. And he definitely had captivated their imagination, had gotten their attention. And then he tells another story, kind of a tied to it, like, well, here's the next step of the story. And now he's really got everybody captivated. And then he goes to a third story, and I saw his wife, because they were on the same side of the table. I see his wife reach over and squeeze his leg. Now they could no, I don't think anybody else saw it, but I saw it. And I'm thinking, she doesn't want him to tell this story. And he starts, and she speaks up and tries to change the conversation, like, hey, would you pass me the iced tea or something? She's trying to stop this story. And typical husband, it turned out they'd been married for like 38 years. He didn't stop. He did not stop telling this story. Now, whether it was because he just wanted to tell the story or God told him to keep going, I don't know. But he starts telling another story. And she actually speaks up and says, I don't think this is the right time to tell this story. And he keeps on rolling, and he tells a story that is a God story, and it's a miracle story, but it's one that involves literal angels and demons, which is not typically something you hear from somebody that you've known for 20 minutes, especially in this kind of a context. Well, he tells this story. He might have had to sleep on the couch that night. I don't know. But what I do know is the young lady who I had known all that time, later in the day, I ended up in the lobby of the hotel. I was actually leaving. She was coming back in. And so we stood in the lobby and had a conversation for about half an hour, just the two of us. And it was centered around, weren't those stories amazing? Now, for context, this is someone who grew up agnostic, wanted to be part of the gatherings that her friends would go to. This is high school. So literally started going to a Catholic church and became Catholic so that she could go do the fun stuff with her friends. And then her friends all walked away from their faith, like when they went off to college. And she didn't completely abandon it, but she had mostly abandoned her faith, but still called herself a Catholic. And she starts telling, like, wow, could you believe those stories he told? Like, do you think they were true? It sure sounded true. It sure sounded like he believed they were true. And then she said exactly what the Lord needed me to hear. She said, I believe that it doesn't matter whether you're Catholic or Hindu or spiritual and pray to crystals. That literally is, I'm paraphrasing, but literally what she said. I think it's all God. And because I had context, I was able to say, well, what's interesting about that is that the Catholic Church would not agree with you. And I told her a little bit about how Jesus is the single path to heaven. Now, I won't get into that, but what I will tell you is this. That conversation would never have happened had that man not had either the inclination from the Lord, in other words, got a nudge from God, or just was in the habit of telling those kinds of stories. Had he not been bold, because it certainly was not the popular thing to do. Michigan is certainly not the most religious state in the country. It's, the northern states don't have a high percentage of believers. Not that any of the states have high percentages anymore, but especially in the north. And these were extreme stories. So that guy was bold. It gave me an opportunity to have a conversation I never would have had. All I had to do was just pay attention. So, we talk a lot about be intentional, be bold with your faith. Sometimes you don't have to be bold, you just have to listen. You have to pay attention to what's happening around you. I could very easily have turned a little bit and had a conversation with the guy who that had been happening all day, where you get little conversations happening at the same table. Would have been very, very easy to not listen. But it opened a door I never could have opened that way. So just want to encourage you. Sometimes you don't have to make a fishtail happen. Sometimes you just got to let God do what he does and see what door he opens. All right. Let's go ahead and take the Lord's Supper together. We're going to be in Luke 22, verses 19 and 20. And this is our standard, if you would, communion or Lord's Supper verses that I read. So right now we're just going to thank Jesus and remember the sacrifice he made on that cross, how he let his body be broken for us, that he literally was more concerned about us than everything else. He put us above even his own life and gave his body for us, and we take the bread in remembrance of that. This morning I was thinking about the story that I teased you that I'll tell you next week. And I thought to myself, I'm going to use the word inconvenienced. From a human perspective, my plans didn't work out because God had different plans. All right. Jesus knew the plan, but let's face it, Jesus was fully human while fully God. He could have not shed his blood for us. It was a lot more than an inconvenience for him to literally give his life blood away. And so to me, it's like, what is there? There is nothing, no inconvenience, no different plan that the Lord has that would ever even, forget about measuring up to, but never even compare to the perfect one giving his perfect blood for us. And we remember that when we take the cup right now. All right. Amen. I need to pick this up. I bought a new get home bag. Now, if you've never seen one of these, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a backpack before. If you're not familiar with a get home bag, sometimes also called or used as a bug out bag, it's basically a bag that has stuff you might need in an emergency, whether it's a long-term emergency or a short one. Here in Texas, we have tornadoes, we have hurricanes. We recently had those horrible, horrible floods. And so I have a big bag that I usually throw in my truck if I'm going somewhere, just in case. What if I'm 2 hours from a town and I break down and I don't have cell coverage and I got to walk out? I want to make sure I've got food and water and change of clothes and, stuff you would need, a first aid kit. And that's what's in that bag. Well, I recently bought this one because it's too big. That one it's too big for small trips, and I wanted something smaller. And I'll be honest, I'm a good packer. I travel every week. I'm good at getting stuff into a bag. This week I had to wear nice clothes all week, every day. I had 5 dress shirts, I had slacks, I had all of your undergarments and socks and stuff. I had a bunch of paperwork that I had to carry with me. I had my toiletries. I mean, um, I had my tea with me. I had I even carry my pillow with, and it's a full size pillow, into a carry on. All right. I mean, I can do a week of nice clothes in a carry on. I'm good at these bags. And I think you'll realize why this makes sense. I don't really go anywhere without being prepared if I if I can. It's one thing if you go somewhere and something catches you off guard, but the whole idea is you have it in case of an emergency. Uh, and it'll make sense in a few minutes. Many of us are that way. We think ahead a little bit and prepare. It's sort of like, I got to go to the grocery store. Even if you're going to go to the grocery store, you're going to grab your wallet. You're probably going to grab your cell phone. You're going to need your keys, right? There are certain things that you probably won't walk out the house without. All right, just keep that in mind as we look at our verses today. Again, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 10. We're going to be in verses 5 through 15. Last week, we talked about who the 12 disciples were, what their background was, what they did for a living, how they kind of lived their lives. That was fun. I hope you enjoyed that. If you didn't see it and you're like, oh, man, I wish I'd have seen that. That would have been a good refresher. Or, oh, I don't know anything about those guys. I'd love to hear that. Just go and watch last week's message on our website or YouTube, and you can see that. So these are the 12. In just a second, in verse 5, we're going to refer to the 12. Those are the 12 we're talking about. So as we read verses 5 and 6, these 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them, saying, "Do not go on a road to the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." All right, so you now know who the 12 are. These are the 12 disciples of Jesus. And he is, for the first time, sending them out without him. All right, that's important. He has been with them. He's been doing all the miracles. He's been doing all the work. The disciples have been watching. And so this is the first time he's like, okay, you're up. I want you to go out. And he's sending them. He's not just saying, hey, everybody go to the park and hang out. He is sending them off in different directions, literally to go different towns, different cities, to go evangelize the Jews. And that's specific. He says, do not go on a road to Gentiles. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the word Gentile, that's a non-Jewish person. I'm a Gentile, right? I'm not Jewish. I'm a Gentile. And he's saying, that's not what we're doing right now. We are not going to the Gentiles. All right. And then he even gets clearer and says, don't even go to a Samaritan town. Now, Samaritans were basically half Jew, half Gentile. Okay. So, and Jesus had just had a phenomenally good visit from an evangelism perspective with Samaritans. So he wants to make sure, hey, and even the Samaritans who are half Jewish, I don't want you to go to them either. I want you to go to the house of Israel. As you're reading through the Bible, if you're not a history buff, it's pretty easy to get lost in, okay, is this a time when Israel was a physical nation or not? Because Israel existed, then it didn't, and the sheep were scattered, so to speak, right? And we are in a point in history where there is no nation of Israel, okay? If you look at a map, you will not find Israel on it on the day this happened. So when he says house of Israel, he's talking about Jewish people, okay? His chosen people who are scattered all over the place. Go to the lost sheep of Israel. Now here's where it gets interesting. This is verses 7 and 8a. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, cast out demons. His message for them to share is exactly the message that he's been preaching. Okay, so when he says, tell them the kingdom of heaven has come near, that part they got, because that's what Jesus has been doing. In fact, a lot of the parables, a lot of the things he said, he would preface with, the kingdom of heaven is like, right? So he's been telling people about the kingdom of heaven. So that part, the disciples probably were like, okay, good. At least the message he wants us to give is one that we've heard over and over and over again. We just went through over the past several weeks the Sermon on the Mount, which is arguably the most famous sermon anyone ever preached, where Jesus laid out all these different concepts, including a great deal about the kingdom of heaven. All right, so that part they got. Something for you to think about, though. What if Jesus asked you to talk about the kingdom of heaven? Would you have to think about it, or would that just roll off the tongue? Just something to think about here. And when he says it, he says, tell them that the kingdom of heaven has come, and he means literally, it is here. It is on earth, because he is on earth. It can be very confusing for new believers or unbelievers to understand how God exists as one God and three persons. How can there be one God, but that one God is God the Father and God the Son, Jesus, and God the Holy Spirit? How does that work? Here's the best answer I have for you on that. It just is. It turns out, I don't know if you know this or not, but water, H2O, can exist, scientists tell me, can exist as ice and water and steam simultaneously, all at the same time. How does that work? I have no idea, but they say it's true, and it is, okay? That's how it is with God. And he's saying, look, kingdom of heaven, tell them it's near. It's literally, it is on earth with you. And that's really important, okay? Because God the Father had spent time with the Jews. They understood God being with us. When they were brought out of Egypt, God was literally on earth, God the Father with them. He literally became a pillar of smoke, a pillar of fire. They've been in physical proximity to God before. So that's what he wants them to say. And understand that these are Jews. We're not talking to people who don't understand all these dynamics I'm talking about. They should, at least to some degree, understand who God is, what the kingdom of heaven is, how it's not on earth, okay? Because God the Father had left earth. He was not hanging out with them anymore, at least not with them as a group. And so he tells them, you need to tell them the kingdom of heaven is near. It is here with us. Now, the next part, verse 8, to heal the sick, cast out demons. These are things he'd been doing, right? He had been healing the sick. He had specifically cleansed lepers. We talked about one just a couple of weeks ago. That was a pretty amazing story. Casting out demons, we've talked about that as well. How many of you noticed how he just slipped in that raise the dead part? Did you even notice that in the past? Verse 8 says, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, cast out demons. He included that, and it's funny, it's number two out of four. Yeah, I'll just throw it in there. I'm not going to lead with it. I'm not going to end with it. Throw it in the middle. Really? Raise the dead? I mean, I understand that their faith must have been strong. They'd watch miracle after miracle after miracle. But let's face it, we're humans. And it's one thing uh, to cure someone, even if the healing is very visual. If they have leprosy and their skin is white and their skin turns normal and healthy, there's a physical transformation. But raise the dead? I mean, I'm curious if you even noticed it in that verse before when you've read through the book of Matthew. Did you catch that on their very first trip, these are rookies? This is literally their first, I can't call it a practice game, because when you're playing the game of share the kingdom, it's every day is a real game, right? It counts. It's not just practice, but it's their first trip. It is literally the first time. Okay, guys, you ready? It's on you now. You've seen me do it now. You're gonna go do it. And he brings out raise the dead. Now, there isn't a story recorded in the Bible of one of them raising someone from the dead. So we don't know whether somebody was raised from the dead or not. But I will say this, it would be very unusual for God, for Jesus, to put that phrase in if either A, he didn't mean it, or it wasn't going to take place. I mean, if you twisted my arm and made me guess, I think probably there were events where one of the disciples raised someone for the dead. There certainly would be after Jesus leaves. We have plenty of stories about the disciples. Just read the book of Acts. You will find humans with God's power raising the dead, but this is their first trip out. Okay. And let me put it this way. I would say with certainty that if it, at least from my perspective, certainty, I am certain that even if no one raised anyone from the dead, God intended them to. Just because God intends for us to do something doesn't mean we do it, right? Sometimes we don't listen, sometimes on accident, sometimes on purpose. So I do believe that when they walked out that door, they had the ability to raise someone from the dead. Wow, that's a pretty big deal. That is a pretty big deal. Let's keep going. The last piece of verse 8 and 9 and 10. Freely you received, freely give. Do not acquire gold or silver or copper for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or even 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff. For the worker is deserving of his support. So here they are, getting ready to go on a journey. Now, remember, no cars, no airplanes. Yes, they had camels, they had horses. There's no mention of any transportation like that, almost certainly. I mean, this one I'd bet you all the money in the bank account they were on foot. They're going to walk to these places. And for some people, the walk might have been a few hours. For others, it might have been a few days to get to where they were going, wherever it was that they were sent. So he says, essentially, don't prepare. Don't don't grab your bug out bag, your get home bag. Don't take your suitcase with you. Go as you are. Now, again, if I was going to go to the grocery store, if you said, if my wife said, "Oh, honey, we need ice. I need you to go grab a bag of ice." I'm gonna grab my phone. I mean, it's only, I don't know, quarter of a mile. How far do y'all think the Sonic is from here? It's not very far. It takes like, even with the slow traffic, it takes like 2 minutes to get there. But I wouldn't go without my phone. God's saying, leave your phone. He's saying, just go. Wow, really? When we go on a mission trip, typically what's the first thing we start doing? fundraising, right? I need money for the trip. I need to cover that. And we start asking our friends, our family, for people who might give. We ask them for money, don't we? At least commonly. That's normal. God's saying, don't do that. Don't ask anybody to support you. Don't get gold or silver or copper. He's not saying don't accept it when you're out, although he will essentially, but that's not what he's saying here. He's saying don't go gather up your money. Don't go to the bank and withdraw. Not that they had a bank. Don't go to the bank and withdraw your money and carry it in cash. He's saying don't do that specifically. Just go. Wow. Okay. And he wants to make sure they get it. So don't go get money. Don't take your overnight bag. Don't take a bag. Not even 2 tunics, right? So imagine that's a coat, right? Now, a tunic was very, very versatile. You oftentimes would use your tourniquet to lay on if you were sleeping on the ground, or as a blanket if you were, um, sleeping outside or you were cold. You would commonly use your tunic for that. This is a very, very helpful item. This is something that was important. He's saying, don't even bring your extra tunic. So, what if it snows? You're in Dallas. No, I'm just kidding. Right? Don't even, I don't care what the weather's going to be like. Don't even take an extra coat, an extra tunic. Okay? Don't take extra sandals. Don't even bother going getting a new staff. Right? Yours is kind of janky. It's kind of falling apart, or you've gained some weight and so you're going to fall over. Yep. Just go. Whatever you got on you, go. Now, I think this begs the question, why? Why was Jesus saying, don't prepare for the trip, just make the trip, just go? Why would he do that? And for context, later, when he sends them out forever, okay, when he's going to heaven, literally, he tells them the opposite. In fact, he even mentions, if you've got an extra cloak, go sell it so you can buy yourself a sword. Be prepared. Later, he would be very clear. You need to be prepared. I argue, and if you know the term prepper, if you don't know what a prepper is, look it up. You'll find all kinds of different versions of what that means. But I'm a prepper. I got lots of extra water here. If there's a tornado and it rips up the neighborhood and we're trapped in our house for a long time, we'll be good for a while. We're prepared for that. Jesus says, don't be prepared. So why would he do that? I believe he tells them to not be prepared because this is their first trip out. You think the devil harasses you? Can you imagine the demonic harassment that chased after the 12 disciples? I'll bet there was a pack of demons following them everywhere. And Jesus is trying to get them to completely focus on him. I don't want you focused on your stuff. I don't want you making plans. I want you focused on me. Don't worry about anything else. I got this. Just go and do what I'm telling you. Don't worry about what you're going to have for breakfast. Don't worry about where you're going to sleep. Just go. Okay? I got it. At no point did he want Jesus relying on themselves. When we rely on ourselves, that's usually when things start to go the wrong direction. And that's true for all of us. I mean, some of you have not done much in the way of witnessing to others, right? Maybe that's something you've been like, oh man, that just seems scary to me, or I'm shy, whatever. For whatever reason, you haven't done it much. Well, I've done it a lot. And it's very easy for me to lose sight of God for a minute and do what I know to do. I mean, I kind of teach people to communicate for a living. That's very comfortable for me. Very, very easy for me to not pray, not be hyper focused on God, and just be John. And oftentimes that works for a while. But then there's a situation and you catch yourself and you're like, uh-oh, there's a God moment happening and I'm here by myself. I didn't invite God into this conversation. That's not a good plan. And usually that's when we find ourselves going, oh, I need a little help. Little help, please, because I have no idea what to do or say now, right? Most of us have been there. He does not want them to get there. He wants them to stay focused on him, right? I know I've said this and you're like, okay, John, we get it. You need to get it because that's one of the devil's best tactics. Just keep you a little distracted. Little stuff. You don't even know what's happening, but he does, and he knows your focus is off of the Lord. And by the way, if you've never evangelized before, if you've never told anybody about the kingdom being near, here's, I would say, the one thing you absolutely should have in your back pocket, the one story that you should be able to tell, or foundation that allows you to talk about Jesus is, this is who I was before Jesus. This is how I met Jesus, and this is how I am after Jesus, whatever that means for you. And it might mean many things. The last time I evangelized to someone, a big piece of it was, you wouldn't have liked me when I was your age. You probably would have liked me at first or thought, oh, he's a nice guy. He's a fun guy, until I did something not nice to you and you realized, oh, he's not who I thought he was. That is who I used to be. I am not that anymore. Okay. And I can tell that story. Can you tell that story? And there might be 20 stories. Well, I used to drink and now I don't drink. Well, I used to swear and now I don't swear. I used to be afraid and now I'm not afraid. You fill in the blanks. You've probably got a bunch of them. But if you don't already know that, that's something you should prepare, because that could happen today. You could talk to someone and have an impact on them today, maybe, and not even know it. All right. This is the last slide, the last group of verses. And whatever city or village you enter, inquire who is worthy in it, and stay at his house until you leave that city. As you enter the house, give it your greeting. If the house is worthy, see that your blessing of peace comes upon it. But if it is not worthy, take back your blessing of peace. And whoever does not receive nor listen to your words, as you leave that house or city, shake the dust off your feet. Truly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that city. All right. Notice he says in verse 11, when you get to wherever you're going, inquire who is worthy in it. He doesn't say who is rich. He doesn't say go find the highest ranking Jewish, member of the local church. He says, inquire who is worthy. Well, from Jesus' perspective, how would you define worthiness? Remember, he's going to Jews, right? So, got to be Jewish, right? If the most worthy person in town is a Gentile or a Samaritan, they're off the list. Focus on Jewish people. And worthy probably meant who does his best to follow God now? Like if you said, hey, who in town, if they tell you they're going to do something, they're going to do it. They're a person of their word. Or, not that he always succeeds at it, but that guy's always trying to do what God says is right. That's the worthiness they're talking about. Okay. So the worthiest guy in town might not have been a person of means. That might have been a poor person. That might have been somebody who not only are they not rich, but they got to work, 15, 18 hours a day just to make enough money to get by. That might be the most worthy person in town. But inquire who that is, find out, and then stay at his house until you leave. So essentially, that's going to be home base. So if you go to a town, you find the worthy person, you're going to stay there for a period of time. A day, a week, a month, whatever. I don't think they would have had time to stay a month, but you get the idea. Stay there until it's time to leave town. That person might not have had an extra bedroom. Okay, you might be sleeping on the floor. Like I said, that person might work 18 hours a day. That might mean you're going to go work side by side with them. Okay, that literally, I'm sure, happened over and over again, where they literally worked with the family as the family worked. And he says, when you get there, give it your greeting. That was common in their culture to greet a home. And I'm going to be careful to use the word blessing, because the next thing he talks about is blessing, and I don't want you to be confused. But it was common to acknowledge the home, literally, and the family when you entered someone's home. That would have been just the polite thing. Just like now, depending on what culture you are. I know if you're going to anybody in my wife's family, at least on her mother's side, not only will you say hello to every single person in the house, no matter what, as long as they're not a baby, you can skip the baby without being rude, but you have to say hello to everybody, every kid, every adult, and you need to give them a hug and you need to kiss them on the cheek. And if you don't do that, it's, wow, what's up with him? Why is he being rude? That's their culture. All right. So he's saying, look, we have some cultural rules. Give them your greeting. Be polite as you enter their home. And then he says, and this is where it gets interesting, if the house is worthy, if it turns out the person is what you thought they were, see that your blessing of peace comes upon it. So you can imagine these disciples who would spend time with this family and almost certainly be performing miracles, right? Uncle Bob is sick, and, Aunt Susie's got to be possessed by a demon because she's not right in the head. They would have just done some amazing things. When those people who have done these amazing things then ask God to give peace to your home and the people that live there and are there, that would have meant something, right? They would have had their attention by this point. And I promise you, when someone was open to the word and the disciples been able to talk to them and they perform miracles and they're responding in kind, they're responding like, I need to know more about God. This is amazing. I want to follow God. I need to know more about Jesus, if you would. Bless them with the peace that only comes from God. And I know there's some of you to whom peace maybe isn't as big a deal. When I was younger, I'm looking at one of the young men in the room. When I was your age, I don't think peace would have been on my list of things that I really valued. It just didn't seem that important. But later in life, it got very important. For you guys that know my story, peace is what brought me to Jesus. And when you felt God's peace, the peace that makes no sense, okay, I'm talking about there's bullets flying and you're at peace. When that type of experience happens, it's powerful, right? He's saying, look, if they're worthy, bless the house with your blessing of peace. But then he says, but if they're not worthy or they don't listen, right? Whoever does not receive you nor listen to your words, literally, you're going to shake the dust off your feet is usually you're going to take the blessing back. Oh, that peace I gave you? Yeah, no, you're not having any of that. I can't imagine having that stripped away, having now experienced decades of God's peace in situations where peace would absolutely have failed to find me. I can't imagine losing that now. That is one of the precious gifts that I covet, that I want to share it with y'all, but if there was some chance of losing it, that would give me pause. Not that I wouldn't do it, but boy, it would be hard because it is so powerful. So not only do you take your blessing back, but you shake the dust off your feet. Now, the easiest thing I can tell you is, have you ever heard somebody say, I'm washing my hands of that? That's the phrase we commonly use, at least the one I could think of, that we use to say, okay, I'm out. Whatever I was doing, I'm done doing that. I'm over it. Okay. Literally. And I think that phrase comes from when Pilate washed his hands. That was a Roman symbol. If you washed your hands and said, I'm washing my hands of this situation, people understood that meant I'm done. I'm done helping. I'm done talking, whatever it is, I'm done. Okay. And we've all experienced those moments at some point, right? Where we're done. Even maybe it might have been about helping someone. I remember there was, okay, I want to be careful because this person is certainly not in the room, not even in this state, but some of you watching could figure out who it is, and I don't want that to happen. There was a person who many, many years ago, we were helping financially. This person was in a tough situation. Somebody wasn't treating this person well, which caused more, not just emotional issues, but some financial issues. And this person, they really needed help. And we weren't poor, but neither were we rolling in money. I mean, it was a sacrifice. I remember one day we said, here's, and I don't remember what it was. And this goes back a way. So like a couple $100. Here's like $200. Go buy groceries for your family, for the kids. Just go buy some groceries. And this person chose, and we had done this on more than one occasion already. And this person, instead of buying groceries, well, they did buy one grocery. They bought dog food because they took that money and went and bought a dog that they couldn't afford to keep because they love animals. Okay, at that moment, my wife and I washed our hands, right? We literally were like, are you kidding? And we never helped this person again financially. We did many other things for them. It's not like the relationship ended. It certainly did not. But there was no more, here's cash. In fact, we even would go so far as, well, the kids do need to eat, and went and bought groceries and took them. Like at least you'd have to try to hawk them or something. I don't know. I figure once you buy the groceries, you're probably pretty good, right? So I washed my hands of that situation. He is saying, Jesus is telling the disciples, wash your hands of it and make sure they know. And in this culture, dusting the dust, or literally knocking the dust off your sandals, was a known visual, I'm done. They knew what that meant. Okay. So he's saying, make sure they know that you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm not spending any more time on you. Now that might be in your head going, well, wait a minute though. These people. So John, you're saying that even though the disciples knew these people might go to hell, even probably would go to hell, God's saying, move on. And so for some of you, you might struggle with that. I used to struggle with this one, like, well, you don't ever give up, do you? No. And you may continue to pray for that person for the rest of your life. But there is a point when God says, stop investing time in that situation, because our time is finite. We will all live a period of time. You know, you've got, and I'm just going to, you've got 70 years, you've got 80 years, you've got 20 years, whatever it is. That's all you've got. And God's saying, I've got more important stuff to do. If they don't listen or they're rude, whatever, if I tell you it's time to go, it's time to go. All right? And I do want you to remember, it is not your job to save people. You can't save people. The more you walk with Jesus and you realize that the people who don't follow Jesus are lost, and that's a very nice word. Lost really is soft compared to the reality of their eternity is the worst eternity possible. What's going to happen to them is so bad that it's almost indescribable. You, as Jesus becomes part of your life, that understanding compels you. You wonder, how come mom won't leave it alone? How come Uncle Bob won't leave it alone? Every time I see them, now you're an unbeliever maybe, or at least Uncle Bob thinks you are, and he just won't give it up. Every time you go to Thanksgiving, Uncle Bob's gonna talk about Jesus. It's because Uncle Bob understands what's gonna happen if you don't follow Jesus. And it's made him passionate about Jesus. But Jesus is saying here, look, I'm glad you're passionate, but when it's time to go, it's time to go. Okay? So why does all this matter? Why does it matter to us how Jesus sent out these disciples? Right? I even told you later on he's going to rescind this. He's going to say, okay, this time, get your bag, right? Get ready to go because you're going to need it. Well, the answer lies in a verse that if you've been part of SteepleLess for very long, you've heard before. In fact, we'll get there when we get close to finishing the book of Matthew. It's Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20a. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. What we just read were the instructions. In fact, that word for send literally means to command them to go. And that command has rolled over. The disciples have all gone home to be with Jesus. None of those 12 men are alive anymore. The new disciples, the new people who are commanded to go do this, is us. If you follow Jesus, this applies to you. At least the go and tell them, whether that's across the street or across the globe, that's now on you. And this is one of those, it's not a bad thing, but it's a hard thing. Some churches, in fact, one of the worst sins I think we Christians do as a group to the people who are trying to find out about Christianity is only tell them the good stuff. Only tell them about being healed. Only tell them about peace. Only tell them about love. Only tell them about unbelievably amazing things that, yeah, it's totally worth all of these things for sure. And it's worth it collectively as well. But there's some things that you need to know. You will suffer. For example, we just don't tell people that. Evangelism. I've heard pastors actually dodge this question. Does this mean I have to go tell people about Jesus? And I've heard tenured, good men say things like, well, your role might not be the actual speaker. Maybe you need to be behind the scenes, or maybe you need to give money towards it, and all of that is true. But yes, the answer is yes. You need to go. 100% of us are called to share the good news. Some of us more than others. Some of us in different ways. But that's one of those. Hey, before you build this tower, you better count the cost. Before you decide to follow Jesus, I know there's somebody that I pray for a lot who doesn't currently follow Jesus. And I know if they choose to, they could lose their family. And this person is close to their family. And if I were this person, that would be a huge barrier. This person reaches out to their family every day, and that might stop. Jesus didn't come so that we would live an easy life. It ain't sunshine and rainbows. It's not why we're here. Now, will you experience the most amazing sunshine and the most amazing rainbows that you could ever imagine? Absolutely. Your life will have things that are so wonderful that you can't even imagine what they would be. So, in closing, while the circumstances of our going may be different, we're all called to share the good news, and specifically that the kingdom of heaven has come near. Jesus has come, and he's going to come again. So let's pray for that right now, about Jesus returning to earth. Lord, we know that you've been here. You know that you've given us instructions, and we know what we're supposed to do, or at least we're learning. Lord, we need your help. We need your strength. We need your understanding. We need your wisdom. We need your courage, because going isn't easy. From an earthly perspective, it may cost us what at least is in our hearts. It may cost us everything to follow you. Lord, for those people who are struggling, I pray that you would help them understand the consequences of choosing not to follow and the amazing life that they will live for eternity that would give them courage to make this decision, and that they would know going in, this is what life is supposed to look like, and I get to spend eternity with God in heaven forever if I say yes. Lord, help us all to say yes. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So what? Now what? I stole that from a speaker a long time ago, and I think I've done pretty much every sermon in the last 5 years or whatever it's been with this closing. All right, so what? We learned about all this stuff. What now? What are we actually supposed to do with it? So my question for you is, are you sharing the good news? Because you're commanded to. All right? Do you know how to share the good news? I know a lot of you are going to fall in that category. Okay, John, I get it. I don't have any idea how to do this. Awesome. We'll help you. We have a passion for it. We're pretty good at it. And look, the truth is, Jesus does all the heavy lifting anyways. It really is more about, yes, God, I'll go, than the journey is hard, because God does all the work. Are you someone that needs to hear the good news? You're like, wow, this all sounds great, but I don't really understand what you're talking about. Awesome. Reach out. Go to our website, contact us, comes right to John and I. We will call you, text you, email you, whatever it is you need. We'll communicate with you and help you with whatever it is that you're looking for. Home groups, go ahead and do the call to action questions now with your group, or you can wait during the week. Maybe you're a group of one. Maybe you're by yourself. On Tuesday, you'll see the call to action questions. They'll be posted on our Facebook page, the SteepleLess Church. Just search for SteepleLess Church. In the search bar, you will find us, not Steeplechase, SteepleLess. It'll try to change your spelling, but you'll find us there. And on Tuesdays, we post the call to action questions, which is how you dig deeper into the message from Sunday. All right. So this week we learned about Jesus sending out the 12 for the first time. Next week we find out what they encountered when they went out. So don't miss that. Thank you for being